Well, the legislative session is over. Special session is in the offing. Where and when we don't. Well, where we know, but when we don't know. Monty Pagenhardt, Garrett County Administrator, joins us this morning. Good morning, Monty. How you doing?
I'm fine, Paul. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. One of our listeners sent me an email, and I'm going to read from it. And it said, I have heard that the Garrett County Commissioners gave the Board of Ed money last year for Kitzmiller and Bloomington schools, but they still chose to close Bloomington and kept the money. I have heard the commissioners say they can give the Board of Ed the money, but they can't tell them what to do with it. If the money was given to the Board of Ed and not used for keeping Bloomington open, was the money given back or used for what? So I'll throw that to you because you're in a position to know. What say you, Mr. Pagenhardt?
Well, Mr. Mullan, last year there was a request from the Board of Education for an amount of money. Now, what was ironic and kind of contradictory last year was the superintendent of schools at the time, Wendell Teets, submitted a budget that included funding for to keep the two schools open. At the same time, they were requesting to close the schools as part of this public commentary, public hearing process, which is a little bit different because if you're recommending as a superintendent to close the schools, you would not have put on in your budget request the money for that. It had been reduced by that. But the Board of County Commissioners looked at this without prejudice to what they were going to do with the money. They said, here's an additional amount of funds in the amount of $1.7 million. The 1.1 of that 1.7 was from money that the county was anticipating receiving from the Constellation Wind Project as far as business utility tax. The second wind project, the Synergix project, they would not be online or commissioned, whatever the correct word is, until the next fiscal year. So they actually borrowed $600,000 to $700,000 from ourselves. The 1.1 was anticipated revenue to be received from the Constellation project. But the county commissioners cannot tell the Board of Ed where to spend the money. They said, here's the amount of money for your budget request, and there are other things in there that they needed to they had requested and for their appropriation. As you stated earlier, and your listener said that one school was closed, one school wasn't. The money that they have is not restricted by the Board of County Commissioners. They said, here's a situation. We want you to go ahead and apply this to your budget, and we'll look at it again next year. Well, next year, here we are again, and the closing of additional schools was in there. There was no money returned. There is a policy that is in place that was implemented several years ago that a certain amount of $500,000 the board can carry as far as carryover. The rest is returned to the county. A couple of years the board was allowed to use that to balance their budget. In the last couple of years that was the case. In prior years that money was returned to the county. As far as any carryover money from this year, the Board of Education does not estimate there will be any carryover. I do know that last year during the final budget approval that there were compensation increases granted to Board of Education employees. I'm not sure right off what that amount was, but that has been a point of discussion with the Board of County Commissioners as to money was given and the Board of Education used that for employee pay increases, and I don't know exactly what that was, but that was part of that money. That's where that went to, plus other operational things that were included in their budget request.
Okay, so if I'm hearing this right, it's that the initial budget that came in from Dr. Teets did have the schools remaining open. The commissioners took a look at that budget, decided on an amount which included a $1.7 million increase over the prior year, and after that, you just don't. You guys aren't really that hands-on with it, and you don't call in your markers, so to speak.
That's correct.
Okay,
no,
so
that's absolutely correct. You do they do submit a line-by-line budget. The commissioners look at it. We look at it as far as staff and make a recommendation, but it's up to the elected Board of Education to finalize the budget and where the appropriation from the local source is finalized. So, yep.
Now you have a situation with the state dragging its feet on what the final amount's going to be. From Commission Chairman Raley, I get the impression that you guys have to go full speed ahead and almost say that that money's not going to be there. And I guess my question would be, what happens if the money shows up then? What do you do?
Your timing is good on that question. The commissioners and myself and our finance staff met for a long time yesterday. Yesterday was Thursday, and to talk about that, and we don't know. We left that at the point that we would think about it. The commissioners think about it over the weekend. There were some emails exchanged between the four of us over the weekend. I'm ready to prepare some of my thoughts today and maybe over the weekend and get those to the commissioners. They need to make a decision as far as what to do as far as the tax rate. And the tax rate is kind of the basis for all this, because as has been put out there, the current tax rate is 99 cents. The constant yield is $1.331, which is 4.3 cents difference. The commissioners need to decide what they're going to do as far as setting a proposed tax rate, and that needs to be announced in the constant yield legal notice, which goes out in the paper here in a couple weeks. That can be amended and changed, but it's really a dilemma, because if that money comes in and that becomes part of a special session, the finalization for the board to make the recommendation is actually April 30th, and on the 24th they're going to make that recommendation. So I think that's something that has to be taken into consideration, and right now I don't know the answer to that. The commissioners are going to decide here in the next couple of days. If you look at the difference between the 99 cents and the $1.331, that is about $2 million. The 4 cents on the tax rate, 1 penny is $500,000. So, taking it into consideration, we really have to take a look at what we do. There are other things that we have to look at as far as the county's budget. So it's a decision and an answer I really can't give you this time. Probably by next Tuesday, I'll be able to give you a better answer.
Now, to be clear and kind of let the listeners in on how this kind of works, what you give to the Board of Education is kind of not restricted on what they can use it for. They can move it around in their budget. What you get from the state, for the most part, is restricted, isn't it?
Yeah, the state money, a lot of what the state money, what comes from the state, is also federal money, which comes through the state, which is transportation, food service, those type of things. They are restricted and can be only used for specific purposes, special ed and other things like that. But what the county gives is for general operations. You know, some of that could be maintenance, textbooks, computers, employee costs, those type of things. That all comes out of the county's appropriation. And you look at that scale as we get less and less state money and the federal money which comes through the state, the difference has to make up by the local. And we've been able to do that last year, or this current year, of the 1.7 was an example. So some of that 1.7 did not go strictly for Bloomington School or Kitsamore School, whatever it was for that time. It's for other things that have been reduced by state funding and could be supplemented. But again, that's at the discretion of the elected Board of Education.
All right. Also, budget-wise,